we're going to talk about Quant. And if anything, this is some bullish news in regards to Quant. Again, thank you to the one and only Quant Papa for some of his detailed research. Let's jump into some Quant QNT. So I want to share this with you, starting things off. And it might be a little bit hard to see on this particular one, so I'll blow it up just for a tad. I'll come out of the frame for a brief moment. I wish I could blow it up further, but it's just a regular screenshot. I'm going to share it on the DM. It's kind of a buggy function that Twitter has. But nonetheless, this is from Adhara, and you may not even be familiar with Adhara. But like it says, we are thrilled to announce that Finality International and Adhara have successfully tested a fully functional connection between Adhara liquidity and payments hub platform and several test Finality payment systems. After further discussing the benefits of the successful test, Julio Farah from Adhara comments, quote, Adhara's tokenized liquidity and digital payments hubs are built with the same philosophy, architectural principles, and interoperability standards as Finality payments systems. And this gives our bank clients the possibility to have what? The best of both worlds. Like you see on the bottom of the screenshot, Adhara and Finality, who has successfully tested a fully functional connection between an Adhara liquidity and payments hub platform and several Finality payments systems. Let's jump into this. So I'm going to come back into the frame. And if anything, check this out. Here's a little bit more in regards to this. And basically speaking, it leads us to this right here for R3. On May 24, 2023, R3 posted some of this. States agreeing to disagree. Interoperability in a world without compromise. Here it is from Richard Brown. And in the last QNT video, we shared some of his key interview. He states he made a mistake when he designed Corda. Doesn't that not sound good? Well, we're going to get into it. It's going to make sense to you. He says he thought the attractions of an Ethereum mainnet style shared global network were so obvious that enterprise blockchains would follow the same model. Listen to this for a second. Even if you're not interested in QNT, listen to this for a second. But it turned out that every successful project wanted to run its own separate network. Looking back, they were right to do so. But it means we needed a new approach to what? Interoperability. And you know where I'm going with this. And two major milestones in 2023, no, not 2024 or 2025 or 2026, 2023 will deliver it. Now, when I got more into this and so on, right, it talks about some of these key things. And I want to state this. I have seen a certain individual who wants to be incredibly bullish on Ethereum because he's like, it is the chosen player of Wall Street. And that may very well be true to a degree. You also have to keep in mind that there's such a thing as in ecosystems, and existing ecosystems are doing what, guys? They're jumping ship to other platforms, not just because of the concept of, you know, those platforms are innovating, but because, let's face it, right? We're always talking about those gas fees. If you're a new startup and so on, you're really going to tell me you're going to build on Ethereum, and that's the innovative platform you're going to go with? Pump the brakes on that one, right? So it talks about this whole thing about Ethereum, talks about obviously this other concept in regards to Corda and the example I'm going to give you here. But he states when he designed Corda, the aim basically was to achieve something similar for firms who have those, you know, those constraints, regulatory privacy, performance, meant that they couldn't use a permissionless network, but who nevertheless saw the benefits of doing business on a globally shared ledger, right? Globally shared ledger in synchrony with their trading partners. Corda has, of course, supported different contracts and interacting directly with each other from the very first release back in November 2016. And of course, that's why they established the Core to Network Foundation, and that course soon was to be built, but globally to Core to Network, so on and so forth. But the point he's trying to make here is this, and I think everybody's paying attention to this, and this is why I want to bring it to you guys. And again, I love how Quant Papa did more of the deeper dive into it to bring it to us. This guy goes on to mention, he soon began to notice something that we found quite vexing. Every project wanted to have its own private section of the Core to Network. They absolutely did not want some random third parties coming along and using their application in ways they hadn't anticipated. They saw the same thing happen with other enterprise blockchain platforms too. At first, he thought this was merely a problem of education. There were subtle privacy considerations that made it attractive to run standalone Quorum or even Hyperledger Fabric networks, but Corda was explicitly designed to avoid these issues. Perhaps our customers just didn't realize that. He spent a lot of time explaining to customers why he thought that, and why he felt as though they were wrong, and wrote a lengthy blog. Can you imagine this? Posting, explaining what bad things happen, and like he says, if you weren't prepared to share a network with other projects, here's an article from that particular time. And the part I want to point out here is this right here. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I like what's mentioned here in regards to the applications. He states, each application will require its own identity, consensus, and governance processes. The firms who deploy nodes to connect to these applications will be lumbered with expensively duplicated and incompatible infrastructure. Think about this, incompatible infrastructure in their data centers. And the industry will then have to spend millions of dollars, this is crazy, right? But this is true, inventing ways to make these isolated applications interoperate with each other. The complete opposite of what the enterprise blockchain revolution is intended to obviously do. Just what? Deliver. And a complete replication of the technology nightmare firms find themselves basically in today. All right. He talks about, some of these other things, but another key area I want to draw to your attention, because this is some good stuff. And that is, he states, in this insight, the extraordinary valuable point of what I'm getting across to you is everybody is on the same network. And he states it's so important that he even went to as far as to say, coin phrases like universal interoperability. Yeah, I know, you know where I'm going with this. To explain to users of enterprise blockchains why they had to get on board with the idea of running their applications on shared networks. Now, where I'm going with this is this. The old system, obviously, is, like he mentions, it's going to cost millions and millions. And if you add it up with all the other companies, may very well be into the billions. Who is the platform where they can do just that? The universal interoperability with the old standardized systems, Quant's Overledger. Of course, this triggered a lot of soul searching, like he says, and so on. Maybe ticked off some of the people, his explanation. But there's a lot of course that's mentioned here. But on this bottom part, he states this right here, and that is what he found in the enterprise space, because we are talking about enterprise, was that the dynamics are completely different. And so each enterprise blockchain project of any major platform has typically deployed to a separate network. Look at this example. It says this wasn't a problem at first, but his fears of chaos didn't, come true at the time. This was because most projects were 100% focused on getting live, onboarding users, and delivering just that value. Unlike public networks, where DeFi became an end in itself, with composability, as the enabler, private networks took a different path, focused on first making each individual project successful in its own right. When he gets into it a little bit more, he goes on to mention that we are now at the part where these projects, using a variety of open platforms, listen to this, especially what, if you hold QNT, or even if you're a naysayer, right? Using a variety of open platforms do not need to be able to interact with each other. Now, you may be scared about that particular statement, but look at this. He says, and they need to do this without risk of vendor lock in our building platform, specifically walled gardens. Oh my God. I mean, think about this. Who mentions that all the time? Walled gardens, universal interoperability. He's clearly quoting everything from GV, guys. I mean, you've been following all this. These are like literally word for word taking somebody else's verbiage, if you will, and mentioning it right here. It says, is their decision to deploy to different networks going to bite them and do so big time? Happily, no. And this is, thanks to two distinct projects, both of which deliver real impact this year, and both which are relentlessly focused on driving open, trusted interoperability. Now, let's give you some examples. So here's the first project, okay? And in the last deep dive, we did talk about Finium. We did talk about finality and so on. So the first project is a new interoperability protocol focused on the needs of regulated networks. Pay attention to this part. This work has been trailblazed by several firms at the forefront of getting real-world enterprise blockchain platforms to do just that, work together. HQLAx is running on Corda, and we'll talk about them here in a bit. And Finality is running on, for instance, Hyperledger Besu, which is an enterprise Ethereum platform, in which, by the way, Quant's Overledger can talk to not just Hyperledger Fabric, but the whole Besu lineup. They were the first projects, if you're wondering about this, to reach the point where they needed to connect their applications. Yes, connect their applications. HQLAx is a sophisticated regulated digital asset network used by who? Large financial institutions. Remember in the last deep dive, we talked about those institutional swaps and how big that was? And I used that analogy of Uniswap, like it was basically like the Uniswap or the institutional Uniswap, if you will. And then literally later on into the research, that analogy was like, yeah, literally mentioned that from the guy who originally posted it. HQLAx is a sophisticated regulated digital asset used by a large financial institution. I already read that, I apologize. And Finality is a private sector central bank digital currency platform. Excuse me. So basically speaking, right, each of these solves a pressing problem for just that, the large banks. Well, what particular large banks? Well, we already saw the examples of who? Bank of England, Bank of International Settlements, even Banque de France. So it goes on to also mention, neither of these has an end-to-end solution for some of the problems these banks are trying to solve, but this example of HQLAx, customers want to settle their trades in a high-quality cash instrument, such as the one provided by who? Finality. Now, there's a lot more to it, and I want to share more about this because I'm incredibly bullish about QNT, and I have new goals when it comes to what I hold with QNT. I mean, I got some huge goals. We all have goals, but for me, when we talk about stacking, not financial advice, but I know what I have got to do when it comes to QNT. Now, supply and demand and so on. This creates a need for what? A very specific type of what? Interoperability. And back to the previous deep dive, if you watched it, atomic transactions between the two platforms. This is not a typical problem that anybody needs to solve in the permissionless space, since contracts typically only interact with contracts deployed on the same network. But like it says, there was no direct prior art anybody could build on, so the engineers prototyped a solution. And of course, it has this whole thing about R3 and Adhara, and that's why I want to introduce to you. So I'm going to get into this next part, and it's all going to flow together, but I had to kind of introduce it in a way for you to kind of have an understanding about it. And basically speaking, I think it's about right here. Give me a second. Yeah, let's get more into it. So before we get into this whole concept of what we're going to share in regards to, our Adhara and so on, I'm going to show this to you. And basically, we were talking about finality and all this. There's some key things, right? So if you're wondering about this, each of these solves a pressing problem, like I said, for large banks. And just in case you missed that segment, it goes on to mention the example of HQLAx customers who want to settle their trades in a high-quality cash instrument, such as the one provided by Finality. I showed you that earlier, but this kind of puts a little bit more of that emphasis on it. All right. We're going to take you back, for instance, to R3. And if you haven't been to the R3 site, again, obviously there's some key things that are just, it's kind of like almost unbelievable, right, in regards to the terminology, but you, again, see where we're going with this. So on the top, if you haven't been there recently, you have this thing called Interoperability Hub. Goes on to mention building a connected network of regulated networks, bringing secure enterprise blockchain interoperability and optionality to regulated institutions. It says, welcome to the Interoperability Hub. Discover the full potential of enterprise blockchain interoperability with expert insights, approaches, and resources from who? Well, obviously R3. So on the other particular site that we were just at, remember we talked about avoiding those vendor lock-ins? And how about this blockchain choice and optionality? We talked about with Quant's overledger, for instance, being able to quickly switch to, for instance, like the XRPL, right? And then some of these other examples, and then if you're a project that wants to deploy a contract, being able to quickly and efficiently deploy, for instance, a QRC20 contract on the overledger platform. What about liquidity? Access to regulatory-friendly liquidity, right? Asset bridging and atomic swaps. Last deep dive, we talked about that. So it states the future of enterprise blockchain depends on just that, the ability of distributed technology providers to work together to connect multiple blockchain and DLT platforms in a standards-based and collaborative way. So again, not the whole concept of walled gardens, right? I hate to use that, example, but it's true. They believe that there will be a proliferation of digital assets and currencies in the coming years across multiple networks of value. Who also mentions the whole concept of an internet of value numerous times. And he also mentions internet of trust. How many times does Gilbert Verdian mention it has to be openless? How many times have you seen in the trailer it talks about it, being openless? There you go. Openness and interoperability, not isolated wall gardens. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's literally like they took everything from R3 of what Gilbert Verdian was mentioned in interviews numerous times over, from 2019 to present, and literally slapped it right on their website. All right, goes on to mention, in regards to not making this isolated with walled gardens, they are the key to unlocking the new sources of opportunities across the industry. Tad bit more in regards to this. The future is interoperable. I mean, again, you could go right to the site and view this all for yourself. It's pretty impressive. It says the backbone of the new digital economy is already forming. Again, this is also taken from what? The Quant Overledger trailer. That lady that sounds like she's from a James Bond movie. Does she not mention some of these key things mentioned here almost word for word? Don't believe me? Go replay that trailer. Countries, institutions, and entire industries are becoming more connected by leveraging distributed technology. Today's modern regulated institution wants to be a part of an interconnected network of networks on multiple DLT platforms where assets transact seamlessly and securely across protocols. Again, another thing taken from the other Quant Overledger trailer. Don't believe me? Look into it for yourself and replay it, and you'll come to the conclusion, well, I'll be darned. Yeah. To support industry collaboration, R3 and Adhara are proud to announce the launch of a groundbreaking initiative, Harmonia, a hyperledger lab. Now check this out. We're going to jump to the next part of what we have. And basically speaking, here it is. June 15th, 2023, just in case you missed this. It goes on to mention in Harmonia, here's the introduction to Harmonia. It's a hyperledger lab unlocking interoperability for who regulated financial networks. Isn't the whole concept of where we want to get in the future to have the regulated financial networks? Because again, we want the institutions. I mean, we can mess all day long with the small, the small potato stuff. But I don't know about you, but the things that impress me the most is when I hear talk about the big institutions coming in, because I know that is a game changer. We're going to get trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars of tokenized assets, right, that will contribute to the overall crypto market. I have to pay attention to, just like what you guys do, what the BlackRocks do, the Fidelities, the Vanguards, right, and so on. So look at this. DLT gained significant traction in recent years in the financial sector. Yes, where its promise of data consistency, security, and shared business logic is the key to resolving long-standing market level inefficiencies. However, as the adoption of blockchain networks continue to expand, a pressing challenge, of course, has emerged: the ability for these new solutions to seamlessly communicate and transact, which is that, one another, right? Again, can't have any of those walled gardens, walled silos, whatever you want to refer to it. There can't be constraints in regards to the financial industry. Now, this, in my opinion, is a project that has totally flown under the radar. And again, this is what I love about Quant Papa. Give him a follow at Quant_Papa_, because he takes a deep dive into some of the things that, let's just face it, may have been reported since last June, but didn't get proper coverage as far as content creators and so on. Meet Harmonia. Recognizing the need to address this challenge head on, R3, yes, R3. We're always talking about the R3 Corda Bridge, for instance, or especially with Xenofin's XTC. But we're talking about some QNT here, are we not? So, in collaboration with Adhara, is proud to announce the launch of a new connectivity initiative, Harmonia, which is a hyperledger lab. As a community of open collaboration, hyperledger labs is exactly the venue the industry needs to accelerate the development of what? Interoperability protocols specifically tailored to who? Regulated financial and blockchain networks. I still see people, and I just shake my head, even on YouTube, who are like, they still look at QNT as just basically being, it's just another ERC20 token. Give me a break. To date, much work undertaken by financial organizations to solve interoperability challenges has been undertaken in private, hindering collaboration and impeding progress. It talks about Harmonia Lab, what they're trying to do, because this is an introduction. They are seeking to change just that, what we mentioned here, by fostering open industry collaboration by providing what? A platform for information sharing. Harmonia aims to bridge the gap between various stakeholders and facilitate a harmonization of approaches. The harmonization of institutional grade financial services? That sounds pretty incredible. All right, what about the collective effort here? Let's get into that. The collective effort will increase clarity. Oh my God. How have we been talking about for a couple years now that we want some kind of thing of a collective effort to increase clarity, regulatory clarity? So are we literally gone from the point of the concept of that regulatory framework, but having a regulatory platform, a clear, precise platform? I think you know where we're going with this. So yes, this is going to increase clarity. It's going to establish common ground and pave the way for seamless interoperability across regulated financial networks. It says that their aspiration is to encourage the incorporation of critical industry insights into existing interoperability work streams. So again, the other example that you saw on the previous page, where the guy from R3 is literally mentioning, in order to incorporate the existing enterprise platforms and so on, that's going to cost millions and millions of dollars. And if anything, like I mentioned, if you add them all up together, it could very well even be billions. But what is the platform that's going to reduce on the overhead? Right, Quant's Overledger. All right, look at this a little bit more in regards to Harmonia. They aim to facilitate the development of robust protocols that enable true atomic settlement. Again, guys, if you watch the last part, when I chop this up later on, you probably will see a little thing in the the thumbnail to watch the previous one. You could pretty much say this is like a part 2, and that's why I do these types of things. I want to keep you guys updated on some of this. So, yes, atomic settlement across what financial market blockchain networks. This, furthermore, is going to address the constraints. We're always talking about the constraints, especially, like how can we innovate in the United States if blockchain projects have to go overseas? Listen to this. By addressing the constraints and requirements specific to these networks, Harmonia aims to unlock the full potential of blockchain tech, opening new avenues for secure and efficient chain or cross-chain operations. Harmonia takes a unique approach comparing to existing interoperability frameworks because you know what? You might be a guy who's just tuning in and you're like, I don't want to hear this. Who cares? You should pay attention to this because you want to know what? There's other projects we cover, obviously, than just, for instance, Quants or XRP and so on. You know how we cover Casper? Yes, Casper with the hard R. Listen to this. Unlike Hyperledger, Cacti, remember how I referenced, for instance, Casper, for instance, or YUI, another Hyperledger lab, Harmonia, if you're wondering what sets them, away from the pack, they are not a new framework. And I think this is bullish as all hell in itself, because I don't know about you, I always want to pay attention to what is unique. It's one thing to say you're something new, but are you really providing a new value? And if so, that's always worth paying attention to. So yes, they are unique. So simulator, it is not intended to define a formal standard like the work of the Enterprise Ethereum's Alliance Interoperability Working Group, but instead, Harmonia's objective is to share a comprehensive set of principles, requirements, designs, and code samples to help inform and accelerate such initiatives. Listen to this, it gets even better. The road ahead may be challenging, but Harmonia's principles, designs, and code samples will serve as a guiding light. We talk about, like, again, you need that framework to give, clarity, but I mean, this is more than just like a beacon, if you will. You know what I mean? Like we talk about the turbulent waters of, the crypto industry and so on. Is this like the lighthouse? I hate to use that analogy, but this is a good example. The road ahead may be challenging, but Harmonia's principles, designs, and code samples will serve as that guiding light. Sorry to mention that. Uniting a spirit of collaboration and propelling the industry towards a future where true atomic settlement across financial markets, blockchain networks becomes a reality. And I love that statement as well, because if anything, people always say this is just speculation, Max. You could talk all day long about this, Max, but it's just speculation. But I like the idea of something so huge like R3, right? And we know how big R3 is at this point, do we not? But the concept of it becoming a reality. Because here's the thing, big financial institutions, they don't want anything speculative. They want things that are going to be just that, a flat out reality. And for us as, the retail investors are investing into this big, institutional grade technologies, if you will, we want to be convinced that this is absolutely 100% solid. Do we not? All right, let's talk about this for a second. Hyperledger Lab Harmonia. Man, that sounds sexy as hell, does it not? I know some people won't let me say that, but that just sounds sexy as hell. The Hyperledger Lab Harmonia. Anyway, takes its first steps. They invite you, of course, to join this transformative journey. You can find out more about it, right? Foster innovation, revolutionize the way regulated financial networks interoperate, and if anything, interoperate seamlessly with other networks, empower industries. Yes, industries worldwide. Man, such bullish news in regards to this Harmonia thing. You know, here at CTN, we talk about a lot of things. We talk about, you know, Stellar XLM, we, you know, especially when it comes to Sorbonne, and we talk about Axios, right? That's like, you know, Stellar's version of ODL, if you will, right? A lot of people don't talk about some of these things. I'm telling you, this is something we want to bring to you guys and talk about Harmonia. When I saw that whole connection with R3, I was like, oh God, sign me up. I want to learn more about that. Now, there is a tad bit more. So we showed you about the Harmonia. I got to jump to this part. Do you think I was going to forget about Adhara? No, it wasn't. Like it says, introducing Hyperledger Lab Harmonia, unlocking interoperability, right? Through collaboration successfully delivered on the ecosystem testnet. So if you're wondering how far are they into this whole thing, they have successfully delivered on that testnet. Finality and, for instance, remember I was talking about HQLA? They run this, and it's kind of messed up on the site maybe because I get zoomed in too much, but they run that, was it proof of consensus cross-chain repo swap settlement. Repo swap settlement. Again, if you saw the previous deep dive, this is literally a part 2. First cross-chain repo swap pilot across what? I know it's kind of hard to see this. Across Corda and Enterprise Ethereum, paving the way for settlement of intraday transactions. That's one of the key things you should try to find out more about. And then, of course, getting more into this, I'll show this part. Finality and HQLax demonstrate together with Banco, you know, Santander Bank, basically, is for us who are Americans and so on. Goldman Sachs and UBS, the first cross-chain repo swap pilot across who or what? Corda and Enterprise Ethereum. So if you guys have been doing your research for as long as, I don't know, you've been into all this stuff, does that not sound incredibly bullish in itself? Paving the way for the settlement of intraday transactions. I'm going to show you guys a video here in a bit, but I want to get into this just for a brief moment. And that is Banco's, or, you know, Santander Bank, Goldman Sachs, right? And it goes on to mention this part right here. Execute that proof of concept. I said consensus, right? I apologize. It was kind of all chopped up right there. Across the Finality payment system and HQLax digital collateral registry, opening the door for the delivery of the first live intraday repo market. So if anything, if you want a title of what this is about, your takeaway should be first live intraday repo market. That in itself is a big deal. On top of this, Finality's mission to provide its participants with single pool of liquidity to facilitate payments, cross-currency payments, and delivery versus payments, which is DVP use cases. So you've seen other guys talk about some of these concepts, especially when it comes to like Ripple's XRP. You know, we talk about on-demand liquidity, and you know, that example I've always used before. You know, your central bank, you know, I need a refill on that ODL. Well, what type of real-time gross settlement solution do you have for that? You know, for the liquidity, basically, right? But this is a different type of thing, but for interoperability on more than just, for instance, the XRPL and some of these other ones and so on. We talk about the flip of the switch. How about switching between different platforms, more than one platform, right? 5 or 6, 7 different platforms instantaneously. You don't think that's bullish in itself? All right, talk about this for a brief moment. This pilot also proves interoperability across the Finality payment system and HQLax's digital collateral registry. Ooh. Bridging Corda and Enterprise Ethereum. Now, where am I going with that? Well, I could reference, if I wanted to, even XDC. What was a perfect example of ISO 222 when that went live, when we saw that one particular individual? He said, hey guys, check this out on his TikTok short, TikTok, what do we call TikTok? There's YouTube shorts, there's Facebook Reels. I guess TikTok is just TikTok anyway. But the point was, he was able to send an ISO 222 message, and he did it with XDC, using XDC as collateral. Well, look at this, collateral registry bringing Corda. So when we talk about the R3 Corda bridge with XDC, again, guys, that's another perfect example. The proof of concept shows the applicability of the HQLAx's model beyond its existing delivery versus delivery use cases of its collaboration with what? On-chain payment providers. I'm telling you flat out, guys, I'm just being honest. I mean, this is very, very, very impressive. I'm going to go further down on this because we're talking about collateral. I want to show you guys this. The transactions were atomically settled across the two platforms, meaning that each system, because I want it to make sense to you guys, boundaries were respected. And here's another example. No collateral was represented on the FNPS, and no cash was represented on the HQLAx's digital collateral registry. And the swap only completed, when both systems confirmed all criteria had been fulfilled. What will also help, to a sense, even make things that much more better. Again, ISO 222, because we understand that, that messaging layer, if you will, that's going to be huge, right? That's going to be a game changer. This also demonstrates how platforms running on different DLTs can be linked to deliver enhanced resilience, reduced risk, and reduction of fragmented liquidity. So it wouldn't be just, for instance, the XRPL and so on, right? We would have other ones, but the key is all of these big financial institutional platforms being able to have the interoperability and quickly switch between each one pretty much instantaneously. That's a game changer. All right, says the success of the test means that finality, because this is a good thing. You're probably wondering, like, well, where are you going with this, Max? I mean, did they have a good test? Yes, they did. The success of the test means that finality, HQLAx, and their mutual clients can now focus on the use case implementation. So we can talk all day about things being speculative, right? But is there actual use case here? The answer is obviously yes. Check this out. This brings the possibility for intraday settlements that, again, one step closer to reality. And here's a great quote from Manuel Villarchaga, who is the head of SEC Finance. I used to call it SEC. That sounds so bad. That's like an insult. So I'll just call it SEC Finance at Santander. It's not, obviously like Gary Gensler at SEC. At Santander, he says, we are delighted to play our part in advancing the state of the art with the respect to delivery versus payment. Again, delivery versus payment in the digital financial marketplace infrastructure. You even got this great quote from this guy from Goldman Sachs. Efficient cross-chain settlement is going to be fundamental to the scalable, because you guys always talk about scalability, development of TradeFi. Yes, you read right. TradeFi on a DLT. So again, recognizing, remember how we're talking about, this is going to cost millions and millions of dollars of that old technology and so on, right? What platform are you going to have help get it done? So yeah, scalability development of the old system. Doesn't that sound like an oxymoron? How can you have scalability of the old? Right, you have to have something that allows that interoperability. That's how you can obviously scale. Sounds crazy in itself, I get it, but states plain as day from this guy from Goldman Sachs that, while this is going to allow for that scalability development for TradeFi on DLT, this is going to enable firms to realize the full potential of this innovative technology. Again, it's unique, it's innovative. Like, why would I not want to be all over this like a fat kid on cake? You are a fat kid on cake, Max. True. It's exciting to see the successful outcome of the work between us. Of course, that's what I'm sharing with you guys. All right, there's obviously more to it on this. I don't want to get into all that. I'll obviously more about finality. But I want to jump to this other part. I know this is quite the deep dive, but this is good stuff, guys. All right, let's check this out for just a brief moment. So check this out. And basically, it's just like what you see on the screen. And by all means, please smash that like if you understand and appreciate this content. So Adhara, Hub Solutions. Remember talking about that? Introduced it to you guys and so on. Look what look at everything that's linked here on the example. Real-time visibility and control of tokenized liquidity and payments across banking group and their clients. I know you guys watch, for instance, Common Sense Crypto, Rich, and so on. How many times did he feel as though, like, yeah, it's all about those tokenized assets across, banking groups and their clients. Hell, he doesn't even have to say it. Larry Fink, BlackRock. Remember those interviews? How big will tokenization be by 2030? All right, take a look at this. Adhara interbank payments. This is big, guys. A multi-bank network and scheme for cross-border, cross-currency payments with what? Atomic settlement. How about their fund? Connecting banks to provide intraday deliverable settlement, liquidity swaps, intraday credit, and intraday loans. So on the previous video, on our deep dive, we're talking about, institutional swaps. But there's more, right? Like Billy Mays. But wait, there's more. And that basically is intraday credit and, of course, the intraday loans. So they're providing not just a solution in regards to like swaps and so on, but on top of that, like the Wall Street's being able to have that credit in those intraday loans and so on, intraday loans. So if anything, man, it's more to it than just institutional assets being tokenized, right? Giving them the ability to bring in that much more money because you're going to have the loans. How about this? Adhara margin block. This reimagines the cash settlement process for margin to deliver structural cash into ratio benefits. And, the big elephant in the room, some people don't like this being talked about, CBDC, but check out what it says. An in-depth solution for central banks to deliver a direct issuance CBDC offering domestically. What's going to happen with that? Is that like, the damn devil, for crying out loud? I don't know about that. As we also know, CBDCs could be used for good, they could be used for bad, but that's interesting because how it's worded there, offering domestically. Well, you're going to be able to blanket the whole United States? No, you're not, right? We understand some of the states' positions in regards to that. So that part, a little negative to a sense, but we'll have to see how that works out. The next part I want to jump into is this right here. And you may be thinking, wow, they must have a lot of followers. No, they do not. They follow two people. And basically speaking, let's see who they follow. Yeah, they follow Finality. They only have 126 followers. You may be thinking, well, why make a big deal about this? I'll tell you why. So it's basically like this, okay? Even though we share some of these things with you guys, you gotta keep in mind, some of that institutional grade technologies fly under the radar, do they not? Basically speaking, just because you see 124 followers, you got to keep in mind the huge players that are out there. This is a huge player, and almost nobody notices it. Finality, for example, people don't know it already, but they have regulatory clarity from who? The SEC. And that was long ago, right? Long ago. Well, how do we know that? Well, if you get more into this and so on, this dates back a few years ago, but it's still a big deal, right? And that's why we bring it to your guys' attention. All right, just a tad bit more in regards to this. So, we're talking about finality. We're talking about the whole concept of like, well, how long ago was this and so on. Again, a blast from the past. That partnership announcement. When was that? If you're still been following this, that was February 26th of 2020. Yeah, that's a big deal. Finality International can confirm that they were adding Adhara. Yeah, that one that basically has hardly any followers. I'm bringing it to you guys. Maybe more people know about it now. I don't know. We're not that big of a channel, but at least you guys get to know about it, right? They brought it to their ecosystem of vendors as a trusted partner, specifically on the design, configuration, implementation of blockchain elements. Like it says, this is aligned with our long-term goal to pursue an open collaboration model for multiple partners for development of the finality global payments associated software products. Ah, really? And where are we at in that? In a freaking test net. Do you not see the concept yet? Do you not see the writing on the wall when you hear, and I'm sure you've seen it multiple times, the concept of price shock? You know where I'm going with this. Adhara's experience of working with commercial banks, central banks, and exchanges on liquidity management, FX, and payments provides broad input into finality at this stage of our journey. A person would have looked at their Twitter, they saw it, I'm dismissing this. This isn't trending. It's not trending because a lot of people are not in the know. Notice all of a sudden we reference this from the past, and where are we at right now? My God. All right, check out this. This is good stuff. All right, so we talked a little bit about HQLAx, if you want to call it. I call it just, HQLA, but you could call it HQLAx. It doesn't matter. I guess we'll call it HQLAx because you know what? I want to state that because we're always referencing lax chain, right? So let's just call it that. So finality and HQLAx demonstrate the first, and listen to this, this is very, very extremely bullish if you hold QNT. So smash that like if you haven't done so. They demonstrate the first cross-chain repo swap pilot. Does that not sound bullish in itself as well? Discover the successful demonstration of the first cross-chain repo swap pilot by Finality and HQLAx in collaboration with Santander Bank, Goldman Sachs, and UBS. The pilot project utilized two Corda. Remember we showed you R3 earlier? You know where I'm going with this. I gotta give you an outline. Some people, I get criticized. Max, you do deep dives, but you take too long to do it. You really want me to chop out all this juicy stuff? Really? Oh yeah, I just want you to condense it all. Okay, well, you want to know something? That's something that maybe sometimes I can do and sometimes I don't. It's just the teacher side of me. This is what I do. All right. I guess, I can accept the constructive criticism, but this is just what I do. All right. The pilot, again, project utilized by Corda and enterprise Ethereum blockchain platforms to be, enables efficient and secure securities, lending, and collateral management across different blockchain networks. This basically demonstrates a showcase version of the potential of cross-chain interoperability in the financial industry, allowing for enhanced liquidity and reduced counterparty risk. This pilot also led to R3 and Adhara's contribution of the Hyperledger lab, which of course we showed you at the very beginning of this outline in regards to Harmonia. Okay, that's a big deal. Jump into this next part. We're almost done with this, but this is, again, guys, really, really bullish because, what I want to show you is on the bottom, like for instance, hopefully you see, I'm gonna come out of the frame for a brief moment. Focus on this real quick. You see on the very bottom, Spunta? Yes, you do. So the reason I want to focus on that for a brief moment is because, for instance, remember how we always talked about SIA? Remember when we had Tokenizer on the show? Well, basically speaking, that's SIA chain, basically, like the app that Gilbert Verdian was basically talking about for the longest time, if you guys remember that. That's bullish also. All right, let's jump into this next part of what we got to, get towards closing this up. So we talk about R3. Here you go. Like it says, integrate with assets that originate on a non-Corda network. R3's commitment to regulated network interoperability. And look what's showed here. Blockchain is a once-in-a-generation innovation that will move industries away from siloed processes. Again, how many times Gilbert Verdian references all this? And foster interconnected public and private networks. That's why we are actively engaged in proof of concepts that show non-traditional digital assets coming securely out of a regulatory compliant Corda-based network. They've gone ahead and set up Hyperledger Lab Harmonia, a set of principles, requirements, designs, and code samples to help regulated blockchain networks interoperate with industry partner who? Adhara. Hence, again, why we're showing you guys this. Again, these are things that fly under the radar. All right, a little bit more about this. Check this out. So this part might be a little bit hard to see, and I'll come out of the frame on this just for a brief moment. And what I like about this real quick is, like it says, introducing Hyperledger Lab Harmonia, unlocking interoperability for regulated financial networks. But what is highlighted is that Adhara has enabled interoperability across a number of platforms, including Nuvaria, Fintium, like we talked about in the previous part 1 of this, from the other deep dive, HQLAx, and just that, Finality. Look at the example on the bottom. It's a connected digital capital markets ecosystem. You have, for instance, post-trade collateralization, digital collateral swaps, like we talked about earlier, digital repo, which is basically referred to as intraday. And then on top of that, how about post-trade settlement, fixed income and equities, DVP? You have the banks. You have, for instance, all of this coming together. I'm going to come back into the frame. And then on top of that, look at this. So this is going to give you an example, of what's going on with this. So again, intraday liquidity and payment solutions for the new wholesale digital ecosystem. Adhara's real-time solutions for treasury and transaction services engage with a variety of core market participants to extract structural benefit and drive both optimization and revenue-generating strategies. Revenue-generating strategies from the institutional grade sector of things? That sounds amazing. This is 3 minutes and 47 seconds. I'm basically done talking about this. You got to see it for yourself. I'm going to play this example for you. Let's go ahead and full screen this. Please smash that like, and we'll be back in roughly under 4 minutes and get back into the comments. Thank you again for being here. Really appreciate you guys. Here we go.
Adhara is a liquidity management and international payment solution for commercial banks, central banks, and multinational corporations. Today, our capital systems operate in geographic and informational silos, creating inefficiencies when banks transfer money to branches and subsidiaries. This results in high capital costs, high operational costs, high risk, and low service quality. Adhara utilizes blockchain technology to connect banks and corporates through decentralized networks. We do this by tokenizing fiat. Tokenization leverages the benefits of interoperability without introducing volatility. This delivers financial stability, capital efficiency, liquidity optimization, and transparency, all in a cost-effective, timely, and secure manner. To find out more, speak to one of our team.
All right, very cool to share that with you guys. Here we go. I like this. It says it's the gold standard. I mean, what's not impressive about anything, like being a gold standard solution, right? I think I might be out of the screen. Hold on a second. Yeah, let me come back in. But yeah, it says Adhara has been instrumental to the development of the new digital foundations. Their natively prepared applications are uniquely positioned to maximize the ecosystem's potential and swiftly unlock its benefits. They, of course, have this collaboration that we talked about. Well, I'm not going to harp on it too much more. But I do like the idea, like it mentions, bringing targeted value to market. Like Gilbert Verdian always mentioned, creating the internet of value and also the internet of trust. And this last part before we close out, like it says, and remember, also reference from the R3 site, enterprise ready. They have a production ready portfolio built on non-proprietary tech. They solve problems that are most meaningful to their clients today while contributing and setting standards for a simplified adoption path tomorrow. I don't know. I'm just incredibly bullish on all this. I just think that, if anything, it's worth paying attention to. I'm so glad that Quant Papa brought this obviously to our attention. And if anything, I'm really glad to bring it, of course, to you guys. Let me know what you think in regards to Adhara. Do you feel as though it's something that's completely, flown under the radar for yourself? Did you even know about Adhara? If anything, we'll try to bring you guys some more of this bullish news, to say the least. I don't have to hype it. It speaks for itself, does it not? The research is what is important. Understanding that a lot of times, just because you didn't see it all over the internet and trending and so on, doesn't necessarily mean that it's not important. What is important to me is what the institutions are doing. This is a big, big deal, and especially because of that R3 connection. Smash that like for some quant. There you go. There's the coverage for tonight in regards to QNT.